I'm Debbie from So Sew Easy, and today we're going to be sewing the waterfall top. The pattern piece is very simple. I'll put a link underneath this video to where you can download the pattern and the further instructions on the So Sew Easy blog. But basically it's one piece of fabric. I've already got my one piece, and the first thing to do is just determine which is the inside and outside of the fabric, and we're going to turn a hem on the top and bottom. So I've just turned in 1/4 inch just on the top and exactly the same on the bottom, and I've folded these to the inside. Now my fabric has a very narrow set of stripes, so I was able to follow the set of stripes both in cutting my fabric and in turning my hem. So first of all, turn 1/2 inch into the inside on the top and bottom and hem those. You'll need to use a stitch which has a slight stretch because these seams will stretch later on. So I'm going to set mine to a zigzag stitch. It'll be 0.5 wide and 2.5 stitch length. So do that and then we'll come back. So now my fabric is hemmed top and bottom. What I need to do is lie it face up, so I have the inside of my hems here. This is the wrong side of my fabric, and I need to find halfway across. So I'm going to measure 26 for mine. I've got one of these disappearing ink markers, so I'm just going to mark on the inside of the fabric a few spots. And then I'll use my ruler and just join up these marks so that I'm going to create a line all the way down the inside, which will be the halfway mark. So I may as well complete that now. I'm just going to draw a light line, because although I know this marker does disappear well, it's a very light fabric and I don't want there to be any little marks left afterwards. I'm just going to draw a light line. Okay, so that's my fabric now marked. I've got my halfway line along here. So now I can just set that aside. And now I need some elastic. So I've got this very narrow elastic, and I'm just going to get my ruler and mark that up. So I have my pieces of elastic, and I'm going to mark in 1 inch on each end. On there. On there. Now I need to find the centre and mark the centre of the elastic. Do that here. And now I need to measure between the 1 inch mark and the centre, and I find that is 7 inches. So I'm just going to mark again at 3.5, and the same at this other end, 3.5. So now I have 5 marks on my elastic, and I'm going to repeat that with the same with this other piece. So 1 inch in from either end, then find the centre, and mark, and then I'm going to measure and mark equidistant between these two marks at around 3.5, and again 3.5. Now I'll set this second piece of elastic to one side and just work with this first one. And now the same way that we did for the piece of elastic, I'm going to do the same for this centre line on the fabric. So this is the centre line that we drew earlier, and I'm just going to leave 1 inch at either side, which I'm not going to sew, and then I'll find the centre which is here, and then I'm going to find the centre again, here and here. So now I have 5 marks on the fabric, and those are going to correspond with the 5 marks on the elastic. So if I get my pins, and we will pin those 5 marks in place. So the first one on the elastic is going to match the first one on the fabric, and then the next one will match, and of course you can see already that the elastic is much shorter, so I'm having to draw it up until it comes here. The centre of the elastic matches the centre of the fabric here. Two more. One there. And the last one up at the end here. So the elastic is much shorter than the fabric piece, and what the elastic is going to do is gather everything up nice and neatly. So we need to take this whole piece now back to our sewing machine. I'm going to anchor with some stitches here, just backwards and forwards, and then I'll put my fingers at both points and stretch, and I need to stretch the fabric out, the elastic out until it's as flat as the fabric. And I'm going to use a triple zigzag stitch. My machine has one that does 3 zigs and then 3 zags and goes like that, and that's perfect for attaching elastic along this line. If you don't have that, you can just use a regular zigzag stitch, and you'll need to hold front and back as you sew, because you'll need to stretch that elastic, and obviously if you just pull from the front, the feed dogs won't be able to pull the fabric through. So pull front and back and stretch as you sew. So I'll do that all the way along this centre, using the triple zigzag to put the elastic on the inside of the fabric, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. So my elastic's now sewn on the inside. As you can see, it creates some nice gathers top to bottom. And I just need now to snip off these extra ends. This first inch of the elastic on each end was just to make it easier to hold on to pull it through the machine. So we don't need those can snip off. And you can either just leave the edges as they are, or if you prefer, you could actually now turn a new hem to the inside, top and bottom, just to cover the ends of those elastic, but that's entirely up to you. Okay, so now we need to move on to the other side, and we need to put the fabric with wrong sides together. So the elastic that we just sewed is going to be on the inside, and the outside of our fabric will be facing up. And I'm going to go through and just match up these raw edges all the way along this side. Now I've made a poor choice of fabric actually for this example, because this one does roll quite a lot, and actually you're going to get a much nicer result with this waterfall top if you have one that doesn't roll as much as this. So a knit that's a little bit more stable and not as rolly would be better than this one is going to be. But I'll go with it, seeing we've started for this tutorial. And I'm just going to match up those raw edges. And once that's done, I'll take my tape, and I need to mark a starting point. And my starting point is 9 inches down from the top. So let's find 9 inches down, that's about there. And also 7 inches in from the side. So if I go from that 9 mark, flatten out those curly edges, and I want 7. Actually, where I've put my pin is exactly right. So this is 7 inches in from the side and 9 inches down from that top hem. And the 9 inches you're going to leave is for the arm. So this is where your arm will come through later on. And now with these raw edges matched up, you need to take a ruler or your tape, match up the raw edges all the way down, and mark a line 7 inches and just pin both together. So do that all the way from the 9-inch mark at the top all the way down to the bottom. And once you have this seam sewn and these 2 layers pinned together at the 7-inch mark, starting here with your first 9-inch pin, you'll run a line just of regular stitches from top to bottom, and that will create a line for you which is 7 inches in from this outside edge. So I'll go ahead, finish my pinning and sew this straight line top to bottom. So now we're getting there with the shape. We now have our tube of fabric and we need to put the elastic on the inside of the tube, so I'm going to turn the top inside out. Okay, so this is the seam that we've just made, and be careful to flatten it out so that you're going to have these loose parts, one on either side, and you'll have your seam just neat like that. And put your hand up and make sure that you do that all the way from the top here. This will be the underarm part. Do that all the way down to the bottom and keep these loose parts flat on either side. Now you also have your piece of elastic from before which has the marks, and start down at the bottom with the 1 inch, up at the top with the inch, and in the same way that you stretched the elastic and measured into quarters on the other seam, you'll do that on this one now, and that will gather up this seam in the same way that it gathered the others. You won't have to stretch the elastic quite so much on this side, because instead of going right from top to bottom, you're only going from hip to underarm. So use your triple stretch stitch, make sure everything is lying nice and flat, and sew your elastic up on the inside of that seam. Now it's time to try on your top and decide where you want the shoulder to come. Mine actually comes in, let's measure. I marked mine between the 7 and 9-inch marks. And I put a couple of pins up on the top of my shoulder where I wanted it to come. Now I'm just going to sew a couple of inches here, but if you want to, you can start here and sew all the way to the end and make like a little sleeve top. So I've determined that, let's have a look, this is going to be the front. So if I take my pins out, and I'm going to turn that hem that way and put that one over the top. See how I've done that just there? And I'll pop my pins back in place. And when I do that, I'll just make sure that these ends match up just fine, which they do. So I'll put my pins back here, and then the front seam is just overlapping straight over the top of that other one, and I'll sew a couple of inches just along the edge just there, and that will make my shoulder seam. So basically this is now the top completed. Easy as that. You can wear it here, put your arm through the gap just there, and it's done. You can make some additions if you like. Up on the shoulder here, where the shoulder is bare, if you like, you can make a tube of fabric and just sew that between the shoulder seams just here. And this can create just a small strap, and it can cover your bra strap. So try your top on, see where your bra strap regularly falls, and just make a little tube of fabric which you can sew in front and back if you'd like to have a bra strap cover here. You can also do more down on the sides here where you have the ruffle. The choice of fabric here is particularly bad for this example because it really curls, and so it makes the ruffle quite wide, and therefore I think what I'm going to do, either snip into it and make like a little snipped effect down the side, or you can add a lettuce hem. The lettuce hem gives a nice curly wavy effect. Let's see if I can get a better picture. Like this. And there's another tutorial where you can see how to do that. It's very simple. So if you want to make this kind of curvy lettuce hem down the edge of your ruffle, you can do. However, that's now it. Thank you very much for watching me make the waterfall top. I hope I'll see you visiting over at So Sew Easy.